We all need to keep an eye out for crime.
Because thieves will steal our cash, our cars, our valuables, just about anything they can get their hands on.
Fortunately, many other eyes are looking out for criminals too.
The police, local councils and businesses are using their own tricks and traps, together with cutting-edge technology to catch the bad guys.
Ka-ching, we've got you.
It was a great result to get that guilty plea.
And the public are using secret cameras to make sure the crooks get their comeuppance.
I can't let somebody like that ruin my life.
We are definitely outfoxed you this time.
Yes, they were brought to justice. Don't call me Miss Marple for nothing.
So anyone who's up to no good had better think twice. They might just get caught red-handed. Today, Carol cares for her husband Keith, who has Parkinson's disease. But that doesn't stop con men from using a cruel and cunning confidence trick to steal thousands of pounds from them.
Knowing that my husband was disabled, I just don't understand how one human being can do something like that to another one.
We are trying to figure out who's making these transactions.
The thieves pose as policemen to con their victims.
So we are trying to put a stop to this immediately, do you understand?
And fund an extravagant lifestyle. But the real police are on the case, disgusted by these cheats and determined to catch them quickly. Also today, 15-year-old Eno has always admired his father, hard-working shop owner Apan. But even so, Eno can't believe it when his dad takes on a thief who's pulled out a knife while trying to steal a bag full of goods.
She said, leave the bag, otherwise I kill you.
But Apan doesn't like being threatened.
I was proud of him because he actually fought back.
The courageous shopkeeper turns the tables on the armed robber and manages to secure valuable evidence for the police. Also later, a spot of dirty dancing as this woman bops around a shop and then brazenly steals from behind the counter when no one's looking. She thinks she's a couple of steps ahead, but this cheeky thief hasn't noticed the cameras, and for her, the music's about to stop. Some criminals trick their way into victims' homes and their trust by pretending to be somebody they're not. The police call it theft by deception. Carol and her husband Keith live in Sittingbourne. They've been married for over 50 years and first met when they were teenagers.
I thought he looked a nice young man and his mate arranged a date for us, and that's where it all started. I was 16, Keith was 17. He was just so nice, so considerate. I loved the way he looked after me.
7 years later, the couple married.
My wedding day was, well, the best day of my life. It was gorgeous.
And in the years that followed, they raised a family. But 15 years ago, Keith was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. His condition has deteriorated over time. He's now mostly blind, and Carol is his sole carer.
There you go, there's your coffee. He wants to do things for himself, but he knows he can't, but he gets upset when I have to do everything for him. When we got married, we took our vows that we would look after one another, and that's what I've got to do. I've just got to look after him. I'll do anything for him. Sorry.
But as if the couple's life wasn't already difficult enough, a pair of ruthless criminals are about to target them with a cruel and sophisticated confidence trick. Their ordeal starts one morning in September when Carol gets a call. The man on the other end claims to be a detective constable called Martin Collins, the chief fraud officer at nearby Sittingbourne police station.
He wanted to know if I had spent £500 on my debit card in Birmingham. I said, no, no way. So he said, well, somebody has got the details of your card and we suspect 2 workers of your bank in Sittingbourne. He said, we have got undercover police in there at the moment. Would you be willing to help us? I said, yes, I would.
But there is no Detective Collins at Sittingbourne police station, although Carol's not to know that. The caller is actually a con man posing as a policeman to draw her into a trap. As part of the scam, he even offers Carol the chance to check his identity.
He said, well, put the phone down, ring 999, and they will tell you that I am the police officer, the fraud officer at Sittingbourne. So I done that.
But without Carol realising, the scammers stay on the line, keeping it open. So when she dials 999, they are still there.
Police, please.
But this time an accomplice answers the phone. Because it's a different voice, Carol believes she is talking to the police when she asks if Detective Collins is real.
They confirmed that it was him, so I put the phone down, and then he was back on the phone again. He said, thank you, all done, and we'll carry on from there.
The bogus detective now has Carol exactly where he wants her. He tells her that as part of the operation to unmask the dodgy cashiers at her bank, he needs her to go there and withdraw £4,000.
He said, don't worry about it. He said, it will be back in your bank within 2 hours. He said, we just need it for fingerprints. He honestly sounded like he was in authority, that he was a police officer. I just believed every word he said.
Carol explains it will take her a while to get down to the bank as she has to get her disabled husband into the car.
He told me not to mention it to anybody. Don't even tell your husband, otherwise it might be compromised. He said we've taken a lot of effort to get this all set up.
Carol heads to the bank. On the way, the man briefs her on her car phone about what to say when she gets there.
He said when the cashier asks me what I want the money for, to say that we've had building work done and it was to pay the builder because he wanted cash.
When she reaches the bank, Carol withdraws the money as instructed.
All the time I'm looking round to see if I could recognise the undercover officers, but I couldn't. They gave me the money.
When Carol gets home, the con man moves to the second phase of the scam.
He asked me to get a pair of gloves, take the money out of the envelope and choose 4 notes and give him the serial numbers, which I did. And he said, ah, good, he said, got it. He said, they haven't been in circulation.
The fake detective says this means they will be able to get a clean set of fingerprints from the notes to help them identify the fraudulent cashier. But to do this, they need to examine the money.
He said, put them back in the envelope. Within half an hour, one of our undercover officers will be at your home to collect that money. He said, we need a password so that you know that you're giving it to the right person.
Carol then waits for the courier to come.
I honestly thought I was helping the police and the bank. I was doing my duty to stop it happening to somebody else.
The courier arrives.
I noticed the courier coming up the garden path. I was looking out the window, waiting for him.
The man gives Carol the password and she hands over the money.
I just assumed that he was an undercover person.
Carol's daughter lives nearby. She's noticed the man and thinks he looks suspicious. On her phone camera, she films him leaving her mum's house, clutching the white envelope stuffed with cash. And Carol herself also starts to smell a rat.
He walked away and he got in a taxi. I just thought an undercover policeman wouldn't be in a taxi, he would be in a car. And that is when I just thought something wasn't right.
She tells her daughter what's just happened.
She knew straight away I'd been scammed. I really felt stupid. I didn't think I would ever fall for anything like that, but he was so convincing.
Carol then has to tell Keith that a man has just walked off with £4,000 of their money.
When I realised I wasn't going to get it back, I felt so guilty because there are so many things that we need to buy and to do for Keith, and I felt that I'd let him down.
But Carol is just one of many victims who have been conned by these cold and calculating criminals, and they show no sign of stopping. Later, The man behind this evil scam is laughing all the way to the bank and leading a life of luxury from his ill-gotten gains. But a genuine police detective, Mark Cannoner, is determined to wipe the smile off the face of this conman.
This is a really callous crime. It's sickening. For me personally, there was a real motivation to catch these individuals.
Then, Mr. Big makes a mistake that could bring his whole criminal enterprise crashing down. We know con men often pretend to be gas or electricity meter readers to get into people's homes, but some fraudsters can be even more devious. So we all need to be wary of anybody who approaches us in an unusual way.
If somebody calls you and happens to know your full name, date of birth, and even your mother's maiden name, don't assume that the phone call is genuine. If you're unsure, my advice is to not disclose any further information.
A tactic used by fraudsters more and more now is to contact you and actually provide information regarding your PIN or a password, or to transfer information between bank accounts. A genuine business or a public service will never ever ask you to do that.
You may receive an email or a letter that appears to be from somebody that you know, but requesting something out of the ordinary, like to send them an amount of cash. If you're unsure and you don't believe it to be genuine, don't respond and try and get hold of that person to ascertain the truth.
Fraudsters have got a great way for engaging with people, making you trust them, and ultimately getting you to drop your guard. But go with your gut instinct. If something doesn't feel right, then it usually isn't.
They say you should dance like nobody's watching, but this thief takes it to a whole new level. It's around 3 AM in a garage shop when she suddenly starts to boogie by the bread shelves. Maybe she's just in a party mood. Well, no. She's actually waiting for the cashier to leave the counter unattended, and as soon as that happens, she sachets over to the till. You see, she's not just shaking her booty, she's looking to steal some booty too. The dirty dancer lunges to grab some lottery tickets, then starts to bop around the shop again. Twice more, she does the same riveting routine. The woman's making a right song and dance out of snatching some scratch cards. Then, just before the cashier returns, she quick steps it back over to the same spot she started from, as if nothing's happened. The woman must have expected that no one would ever see her performance. But the security cameras captured her every move. The thief left shortly after, but if she thought she was going to waltz off with her winnings, she was sorely mistaken. The stolen lottery tickets were cancelled and therefore worthless. Police released this footage hoping a member of the public would recognise her, which they did. And a 35-year-old woman has been arrested. And now the police are taking steps themselves to enforce the law strictly. A woman fills her bag with groceries at a local shop, then tries to walk out without paying. And when the store owner tries to stop her, she threatens him with a large knife. The owner has a split second to decide what to do. He knows he could be in great danger, but he doesn't hesitate. In Benfleet, Essex, this local store is run by its hard-working owner, Apan. Originally from Indonesia, he moved his family to the UK 8 years ago.
Benfleet is nice area, nice people.
Apan's married to Sarajini and they have 3 children. Their 24-year-old daughter works in a hospital. Their 19-year-old son requires special care because of a neurological condition, and their youngest son, Eno, who's 15. Eno was only 7 when the family came here.
My dad was just like, okay, we're going to sell the house and move to UK. And I was just like, why? And then he was like, for my brother's treatments, they'll be more accessible in UK and for my studies.
Eno has excelled at school. He's inherited his father's work ethic.
My dad, he's always been a hard worker. His dad died when he was young, so my dad was the main person for the family, and he does like nearly 20 hours, mostly all days, and it's just amazing.
The family live above the shop and have fitted a CCTV system for security. And one night, that system proves its purpose when Appan finds himself threatened by a woman wielding a large, sharp knife. It's a Saturday evening in the spring. Appan's manning the store on his own. His wife's sleeping upstairs and the children are away visiting relatives. An hour before closing, a security camera shows Appan serving a female customer.
She buy beer and tobacco, that's amount £60. She take it in the bags. I say you pay first and then after take it back.
Appan asks the woman to put the £60 worth of beer and tobacco back on the counter until she's paid, but she doesn't. Instead, she appears to look for her bank card.
She said, "Oh, I leave it in the car."
He doesn't believe her. He's convinced she has no intention of paying for the goods in the bag.
She want to make trouble. She take it with her outside.
The woman puts the bag down by the door and moves towards her car. Appan is suspicious and follows her. As soon as he gets near the bag, she rushes back and picks it up to take to her car.
I say no, can't take it to the car. She said leave it, leave it, leave it. I said no.
He tries to take the bag away from her, but then the woman reaches into her pocket and he is horrified to see her pull out a sharp 5-inch knife.
She said leave it in the bag, otherwise I kill you.
Despite the threat, Appan keeps hold of the bag. He's not willing to hand over £60 worth of goods to the thief.
My heart no accept. My heart say upon you hard work, don't lose money.
He moves backwards slowly, realising he's taking a big risk defying the robber.
Possible she can make mistake with a knife. But at that time, I am very steady.
Appan courageously snatches the bag from the woman and moves away, spilling 2 packets of tobacco in the process. While she picks them up and is distracted, he grabs a folded chair to use to disarm her.
I don't want to attack her. Just take a knife.
She sees Appan approaching her and runs away. Out of camera view, he swipes at her with a chair and manages to knock the knife onto the ground. As the woman runs off, he picks up the knife in a tissue to preserve the fingerprints. He can feel how sharp the weapon is, and he now realises how much danger he's been in.
After, I am little nervous.
Appan's so shaken, he's worried he won't be able to explain clearly to the police what's happened, so he phones his son Eno instead.
He says, a lady came in with a knife, quickly come. And then he hangs up. Literally, I felt so dizzy because when a knife is involved, you get so many thoughts.
Eno calls the police and they respond immediately.
My son looked after me. He called police, they come in quickly. Teamwork.
Eno arrives at the shop a short while later.
I see 3 police cars and then loads inside. And then when I saw my dad, he was just cool and I was like, you scared us? What happened? Are you okay? And he's like, yeah.
Appan shows Eno and the police the CCTV recording to explain what happened. Eno is stunned by what he sees and his dad's bravery.
I was proud of him because he actually fought back. And at the same time, it was too risky because no one knows what could have happened.
One police lady, she said, really well done.
Appan hands the knife over to the officers.
The fingerprints are on the knife and it was just easy to guess that she was going to get caught.
Perhaps realising that, the woman hands herself in at the local police station a few days later. Thanks to Appan's brave actions in disarming the robber and his quick thinking preserving the evidence, the police can make sure she isn't going to be a danger to anyone else for a long time. In court, The woman was sentenced to 4 years in prison for robbery and 12 months for possession of a knife, both sentences to run concurrently. Following the robbery, the family have decided to boost their security measures.
We fitted a panic button, so as soon as we press it, the police will be here. Also, at night, we have 2 staffs minimum working at the shop, so if something happens, there's another person to help out.
Apan's family are trying to convince him to take some well-earned time off, and the message is starting to get through.
See, I am going to 1 week of holiday. You look after...
You're always on holiday, boss. My sister started working. I'm going to be starting to work like in a couple of months. So there's no need for him to work 20 hours. Then he should just have fun now.
We're back in Kent, where 2 con men have been posing as police officers. They claim, convincingly, that they're investigating a bank fraud to dupe vulnerable people out of their savings. Unwitting victims like Carol, whose husband Keith has Parkinson's disease.
I told him my husband was disabled. I just don't understand how one human being can do something like that to another one.
But Carol isn't alone. These con men have been very busy. Over the past few months, scores of people across Kent have fallen for the same scam. Detective Sergeant Mark Canada and his team from Kent Police are trying to track down the ruthless men responsible.
The sort of victims that were being targeted, they were elderly, they were vulnerable, and they're of the generation that would trust the police or the bank. I mean, why wouldn't you? If a police officer's ringing you and asking you to do specific things, you're going to help them. You'd want to. This is a really callous crime. It's sickening. It could have been my mother that was targeted in this way, or my father, knowing the impact that would have on them. For me personally, there was a real motivation to catch these individuals involved.
A week after Carol was scammed, the con men approached their next target.
Another victim received a phone call from an individual purporting to be a police officer.
As usual, the con man asks the woman to withdraw money from her bank and says a courier will come round to collect it. But this time, his target isn't convinced.
The victim thought there's something not quite right. However, she was shrewd enough to go along with it.
The quick-witted woman hands the phone to her husband and rushes off to the police station to tell them what's happening. She informs officers that the courier will be coming to her house later that day to collect her money.
For us, that was gold dust.
Mark sends colleagues to lie in wait at the woman's house. And when the courier arrives, he gets a shock.
Unfortunately for him, he's confronted by police officers. Great feeling all round.
They arrest the man and seize his 2 phones. Mark's team immediately download the call data and find the courier's been in constant contact with another man.
That individual we identified to be a Mr. Hamza Ali. We believed he was the enabler of these crimes, the person who was potentially ringing the victims, therefore Mr. Big in our eyes.
But there isn't enough evidence to bring Ali in. And the courier's arrest doesn't stop the crimes. 3 weeks later comes the worst yet, when a 90-year-old woman is targeted. Again pretending to be a policeman, the con man persuades her to put all her jewellery, which was worth £20,000, into a parcel and leave it on the doorstep so it can be taken away for safekeeping.
The sentimental value is immense, it's unmeasurable. This is jewellery from her late husband, her wedding ring, her engagement ring, stuff she's collected over a lifetime. You can't replace that. And it just shows how callous these individuals are.
But the 22-year-old con man's greed doesn't stop there. This time, he also gets the elderly woman to put her bank card in the parcel. And it's used a few hours later in a shop in the Lewisham area of London. Mark's team are notified, and when they check the CCTV to see who used it, Mark can't believe his luck.
What we then identified was our man Hamza Ali, there in possession, on camera, with that bank card. Therefore, great evidence of his involvement in this crime.
An arrest warrant is issued for Hamza Ali, but he proves difficult to find. A few weeks later, Mark receives intelligence that Ali is actually out of the country and due to return from a holiday abroad. The police go to the airport to intercept him.
As he comes off the plane, officers moved in and made that arrest. Now, his face was a picture, a look of shock, disbelief, and why is this happening to me? And ultimately, how have you identified me?
They seize Ali's phone and it provides a treasure trove of evidence. As well as call data linking him to previous crimes, there is an actual video of him conning one of his victims.
So we are trying to figure out who's making these transactions, and of course we know this is not you. Do you understand? Ordering Pornhub DVDs. So we are trying to put a stop to this immediately.
Shows how confident he is, how arrogant he is, and how convincing he is.
But also how foolish he is.
This represents irrefutable evidence.
Ali's phone is also full of videos of him enjoying a life of luxury.
Designer jewellery, designer watches, designer clothes, high-end car hires, flash holidays abroad.
There is even video showing Ali proudly showing off the cash he's conned from vulnerable people.
Now, the flip side of that, of course, is we had victims such as Carol, victims who were left wondering how they're going to pay the bills, how they're going to afford food.
Mark questions Hamza about his crimes and is appalled by his attitude.
He had nothing to say. No remorse, nothing.
Despite the overwhelming evidence, Hamza Ali refuses to admit his guilt.
So that, therefore, for the victims meant the potential of having to attend court and give evidence, to go through that whole experience once again.
To avoid 22 victims having to go through such an ordeal, Mark's team works hard to build a watertight case against Ali, and their efforts pay off. In court, a jury found Ali guilty of conspiracy to defraud. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison. The courier pleaded guilty to his part in the crimes and was jailed for 12 months. Carol and Keith were relieved when they heard the verdict.
Now I know they're in prison, and at the moment they can't do it to anybody else. It feels good.
For us as police officers, to know he'd been finally convicted was immensely, immensely satisfying.
The police are trying to retrieve as much of the money and property as they can for Hamza Ali's victims. Carol doesn't know yet if she'll get anything back, but she and Keith have moved on as best they can and are looking to the future.
At the moment we are hoping to have perhaps a holiday next year, if we can afford something and get somebody to come with us to help us, and then that would be fine. We'd like that.
That's it for today, and that's it for a few more criminals who've been caught red-handed.
A seedy website and a disturbing find by the Thames. Are they linked? London Kills returns at 1:45. And the situation between Jack and Fraser gets way out of control. EastEnders earlier than usual tonight at 7 on BBC One. But next, sometimes the small things make the biggest profits on Bargain Hunt.